Welcome. I am Aaron Burr of the Free Thought Doctrine. You are now listening to my solo podcast, the Aaron Burr Broadcast. This will be released on the Free Thought Doctrine channel on all platforms, but it will be a solo show of me ranting and raving of topics of the day. And that first topic of the day is something that I know is pissing a lot of people off in terms of just being downright tired of it, as well as being furious and outraged by the huge, blatant abuse of power by those in charge. Of course, I'm talking about lockdowns. Lockdowns. Sick of it. Tired of it. I know it's worse in some states, but there's a lot of places that this is affecting people in the worst possible ways, down to complete, unnecessary, annoying irritations to devastating destruction of people's livelihoods. The fact of the matter is, no human being, no government official can tell a business owner that they cannot be open or run their business. Where did this nonsense come from about essential and non-essential? The government can't deem businesses essential or non-essential, because the reality is that people that work there, or the people that run these businesses, that is essential to them. That is essential to them buying food for their families. That is essential to them to pay off their mortgages or their rent. That is essential to them to pay off their car payment or their credit cards or their loans. All those things make their businesses and their jobs essential. The fact of the matter is, if we truly lived in a free market society, this would not have even been a thing. We don't have kings that get to dictate what people do for a living. And I know for years we've had business licenses and liquor licenses, and that's how the government kind of had, strangleholds on businesses. And frankly, I reject the fact that we even have to have business licenses or liquor licenses. The fact of the matter is, unless a business is actively hurting people, then the government has no business sticking their nose in their business. And now they take it to a whole nother level. The government has no right. There's no right at all. A complete breach of power. If two or more people enter into a mutual agreement to do business with each other, that's all it takes. The government doesn't have a right to intervene. And in these times, the customer, if they willingly walk into a business, they are already accepting that risk. The government's sitting here basically babysitting people to the maximum effect. And to the extent they've gone, this is an unprecedented breach of power. These politicians and unelected bureaucrats are wielding an enormous amount of illegitimate power. It's been a monster power grab by the ruling elite. And it's going around all over the world. It's going on all over the world. I've heard several say it, but this is an international attack on worldwide capitalism by the global deep state order. You've probably heard of the Great Reset by now, and that's what they're trying to pull off. It's a giant global push towards socialism, which in effect is communism. And we could already see the effects that have happened in the last 9 months or so. We've seen the biggest transfer of wealth from small businesses to massive corporations. 60% of small businesses have failed to the lockdowns. Of course, they will blame it on coronavirus, but we all know it's the lockdowns. It's mainly an attack on these small businesses, right? Did you know that statistically, 50% of all private sector business in America is small businesses? 50% is small businesses. So we have an all-out attack on at least 50% of the population, trying to force everybody into these massive conglomerate corporations or being forced onto the public dole. It's corporatism. It's socialism. The fact that people at all can accept this, I know that myself, and I could probably speak for several thousands out there, if not millions, is yes, we have stomached it, but as you can look out and see, there's many that can stomach it no more. And there's plenty of examples now, maybe not plenty yet, but there are examples of store owners, restaurant owners, gym owners speaking out against the cities and the states, especially in these blue cities and states that had the lockdowns come down the hardest. And I've said it before, lockdowns do not work, right? Look at Florida, versus New York. Florida, open for business. New York, complete lockdown. And look at the surges. They both have surges. So what's that tell you? Locking down, it doesn't stop anything. Mask mandates, they don't stop anything. And really, if you take a step back, I mean, they're always saying, listen to the science. Listen to the science. It's science. But the reality is, if you look at the science, it's actually, well, the things they are doing are rejection of that science. Rejection. Naming one peer-reviewed, randomized clinical study that says these lockdown measures work. Newsflash, there's zero. There's zero that work. Even the WHO, for what they're worth, has come out against lockdowns. They do not work. Look at some of the strictest lockdowns all over the world, and they have had no effect. The fact of the matter is the virus will spread. And then you look at the fact that it's a 99% survival rate. It really doesn't add up, does it? Just shut up, put your mask on, and stay at home. That's the mantra they have, right? It's just a huge power grab. A huge, monstrous power grab. They just want us to be sheep. And the sad thing is a lot of people are. And the sadder thing, there's a lot of people that chastise people that speak out against it. And the even sadder thing is in some blue cities and blue states, the police are enforcing it. In fact, the same people that yell and scream defund the police or abolish the police are the exact same people that will call the police for someone having too many people at their house. The irony and the stupidity is absolutely mind-boggling, and it pisses me off. I'm sick of seeing it, and I know I'm not the only one. These lockdowns need to end. These blue city mayors and blue state governors need to be held accountable. These public health officials need to be held accountable. Everything they say has been wrong. Don't wear a mask, wear a mask. Even social distancing. I don't mind a little social distancing because I don't want people up on me all the time. But does the science really support that? That's based off lab studies. Is there clinical studies that support that? No, there isn't actually. And no, I'm not a damn doctor. I'm sick of that prerequisite if you want to speak out against this nonsense. Look, if you want to stay home, if you want to shut down your business, if you want to cut down employees, if you want to social distance, if you want to wear a mask, go for it. But to force other people to do it when the data doesn't back that up, to have, to call authorities on people that don't comply with what you think is right when the data doesn't back that up, that's total BS. And reality is the people that are trying to enforce these things are the people that are the ones who should be arrested and locked up. These mayors and governors, these city councilmen, county supervisor, whoever is backing this up, they should be arrested and held accountable for the misery they're causing on fellow citizens and forcing businesses out of business. The science does not support these lockdowns or mask mandates. And when it comes to masks, I know some people ask, what's the big deal about masks? Well, just wear a mask. Again, the science is mostly inconclusive. And at best, they have a minimal effect. And think about it. How does a mask not do more damage to your health? It makes you breathe harder. It concentrates germs right at entryways. You get that thing wet. It's a hotbed for bacteria. It's all about control and social conditioning. It really is a rejection of science. I mean, mask. If you are in a sanitized area, like in a hospital, in a surgeon area, where someone applies your gloves and you very carefully put on your N95 mask, never touch it. At the end of the time that you're using it, you take it off and either dispose of it forever or put it through a washing machine with 700 degrees temperature to sanitize it. Unless those things are happening, that piece of cloth you're putting over your face that you constantly take on, take off, and touch and fiddle with, which it's extremely annoying to have on, so it makes sense why people would do that, but that has no scientific benefit whatsoever. It really is about control and social conditioning. It's more like a cult-like religious following, a complete denial of the data and the facts. All these quote-unquote provisions have been put into place for a quote-unquote disease with a 99% survivability rate. I mean, really, people think about that. And get ready for that vaccine-mandated society I was talking about in a prior episode of the Free Thought Doctrine. That Nazi-style where's your papers? That's coming to a reality near you very soon. You want to participate at all in society? Guess what? You're going to need a vaccine. And Andrew Yang recently, I think just last week, he talked about having some sort of barcode that could be scanned to show that people are up to date on their vaccine. Because there's going to be boosters. I mean, look at the scare tactics they're using right now with the new strain or the new mutation from the UK. You really think that's a coincidence that's coming out at the exact same time that they're starting to release the vaccine? and they're skeptics about the vaccine. I really think it's a complete coincidence that suddenly there's all this talk about mutation, a new strain, and that it's more contagious to younger kids and it's more deadly to more people. Isn't it not a coincidence that that's happening right at the release of the vaccine? And then some even go further and say the vaccine won't protect against that. So what measures are they going to put into place with the vaccine or with the lockdowns? So now we'll have the lockdowns, we'll have the vaccine, and a new strain saying that the vaccine doesn't necessarily combat or prevent that. So now we got to continue the lockdowns, continue the mask wearing. It's a never-ending scenario. It's just an onslaught, a constant attack. They'll never let it go. You think they're going to let all this power go? They'll never let it go. It's unending. It's all a huge game to them. It doesn't matter if it destroys people's lives. They want to dramatically transform the society. It's the talk of the Great Reset. I don't respect and I outright reject people that push these anti-science objectives. And if you are one of these people pushing any of these lockdown measures, then you, whether you admit it or not, you are a totalitarian, whether, again, you realize it or not. You are the totalitarian. If you're the one out here pushing this nonsense on people, then you are part of the problem. Let's face it, folks, this is fascism. Down to the point of forcing you to wear, what's the big deal? It's just a mask, but forcing you to wear a piece of cloth over your face when you enter a business or walking around outside. It all comes from the same place, whether it's put that cloth on your face or shut this business down, or hey, you can only have 25% of people in there, knowing that you're going to go bankrupt if you do that, or hey, everybody has to eat outside even though despite the conditions, whether it's super hot or super cold. In New York, they won't even let people come inside to use the restroom. What kind of nonsense is that? It all comes from the same place. And if you're one of these people pushing this, you yourself are a petty tyrant. If you wear a badge and you're enforcing this, you yourself are an outright totalitarian dictator. People need to start pushing back. How much fear will people buy into? How effective will these scare tactics take? I mean, obviously, a ton of people, if not the majority, have bought into it. But will it keep working? Mass civil disobedience. That's what it's going to take. People have to remember, though, that our rights are not derived from the government. They're not derived. The government doesn't grant us rights. There's not a top-down command structure. Rights are derived from whoever you believe in. You could say rights are derived from God. Rights are derived from nature. Rights are derived from the universe. But the point is, they don't come from the government. I don't care who you are. It does not come from the government. And I think it's time that we remember that. Screw the Great Reset. I know I'm not the only one out here. These lockdowns are ridiculous. Ridiculous. They don't do anything. And the masks don't do anything. Hopefully people wake up. I think they're waking up, but they need to wake up sooner. You combine the lockdowns, the scare tactics, the weaponization of the coronavirus, this weird, crazy election where the people that are pushing these lockdowns and pushing these scare tactics win the election. Come on now. Come on now. And one thing I want to bring to your attention. So Kentucky Senator Rand Paul said, quote unquote, no science is able to corroborate mask mandates across the country, warning Americans that submission is the real aim of public health officials. Exactly what I've been ranting and raving about, right? The Republican senator on Saturday reiterated remarks he made to Fox Business Thursday that there's no science to keeping schools closed, and there's actually no good science to keeping restaurants closed. In fact, there's no good science that anything we've done has changed the trajectory of the pandemic. Again, I'll bring up Florida versus New York. Florida, no lockdowns, or at least not for a while. New York, huge lockdowns. No science to keeping schools closed. Exactly. There's been no huge mass outbreaks in schools. As much as they've been trying to shut schools down, and some schools has opened up and they've messed with their school hours and all this kind of stuff. If they're allowed to be open at all, it just depends on where you're at in the country. But you have not heard of any mass, huge outbreaks of coronavirus in the schools, right? And even in the colleges, in the universities, you would hear about certain outbreaks here and there. But did you hear about huge mass people in these colleges or universities dying? No, you haven't. There's no good science to keeping restaurants closed. Again, think of the restaurants that do allow people to dine inside, right? Or at least when they were. Think of the logic. Just think of the logic for 2 seconds. You wear a mask as you enter. You wear a mask when you walk over to your table. You sit down, and now you can take your mask off, where you can eat and drink and talk or do whatever. And then if you need to use a restroom, you put your mask back on, you walk the 5-10 feet to the restroom, do your thing, come back the 5-10 feet, sit down and take your mask off. How does that make any sense? That doesn't make any sense. There's no science. There is none, zero, that says that situation is effective at all. Speaking with Breitbart News at Turning Point USA Convention, a gathering of young conservatives in West Palm Beach, Florida, Paul said minor health precautions as simple as washing one's hands and keeping socially distant have made no difference in slowing the spread of coronavirus. Paul, who practiced ophthalmology for 18 years before becoming a senator in 2010, ridiculed government mandates and just about any other public health measure taken since the start of the pandemic in March. Exactly, because none of it has worked. Previous reports have noted that Paul's medical certification is contested by some national ophthalmology board members. Of course they're going to bring that up, right? Newsweek, fair and balanced. Yeah, sure. I know it's not their motto, but the media is a media, right? We've talked about this, enemy of the people. So they go on to say he warned young Americans their high school graduation ceremonies and possibly their 10-year wedding anniversaries a decade from now will be banned by the government if we're not careful to protect our individual freedoms today. 100% agree. 100%. Every one of the mandates, and you look into the country after country, state after state, this is Rand Paul talking, you look at when the mask mandates went in, the incidents went up exponentially after the mandates. 100% true. Restaurants, nobody can eat in a restaurant. There's no science behind any of that. Exactly, we're just saying that. That's what Breitbart's editor-in-chief said, who mocked masks as face diapers. True, that's essentially what they are. Let's see, the story goes on to say, regardless of Paul's remarks, the federal government that employs him does not agree with his anti-mask sentiment. Of course they don't. Of course they don't. Wearing a cloth face mask, practicing social distancing, washing our hands are good practices that help us protect our neighbors from COVID-19. As our economy reopens, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services tells Americans in a statement issued this summer. And to Rand's point, has any of that stopped this whatsoever? Has it stopped this new strain coming from the UK? Absolutely not. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention, another completely worthless agency, has also put out similar warnings as health-conscious citizens looking to curb the spread of COVID-19. Paul embraced the Breitbart editor's mockery of wearing masks, noting later in the interview, it's like wearing your underwear. You might as well cut your underwear up and wear your underwear as a protection. It doesn't work. Just like I was talking about how you put it on, you're taking it on and off, you're constantly touching it, right? It's getting moist and wet just from naturally talking and breathing. And it's just all that concentration of germs and bacteria right there at the entries of your body. See, what else does this article say? All right, well, I guess they're quoting Paul again here. So none of it really makes any sense. And there's no epidemiological evidence. It's like, wash your hands, stand 6 feet apart, Paul continued. There's no evidence that slowed down the spread. The trajectory of the virus hasn't been altered at all by any of these things. That's what I've been saying. And that's what a lot of people have been saying. And if anybody's paying attention, that's what they've seen. Paul has latched onto Trump's unfounded claims of widespread voter fraud, telling Fox Business viewers this week, if you want elections to be legitimate, you must punish those who committed fraud. So, they're going on to talk about the election, and I kind of covered this point, that the same people that are fighting for all these measures that have not worked out at all, they're the same people that won the election. Just putting that out there. So at least there's one, hopefully more, elected officials like Rand Paul. You must give credit where credit's due, and I commend him for this. And he's continuing to speak out against it, as he should, and others should join him, that all this is nonsense, BS. It's just a curtail and restriction of basic human freedom. And they're using the coronavirus now. They're using the new mutation coming out now. Who knows what else are they going to use in the future? What's the next public health crisis that gives them the right to completely reach in and restrict our lives? Is it global warming? Climate change? Is it guns? What is it? There's definitely something more that will come with this kind of power grab BS nonsense that they're effectuating not only on the American public, but the worldwide public. That's all I have for now. I'll be back with more. You're listening to the Aaron Burr Broadcast of the Free Thought Doctrine.